Hey, Stu.
Thomas, how are you, sir?
Good, bud. Good. Tactical Fitness Report with Stu Smith, number 126.
That is correct. Yes, we're moving right along.
So this one, Stu, is from an athlete that's 33 years old, and he's asking you a question. So this is an Ask Stu segment.
Okay, so we're expanding upon a question someone submitted by email, which is something I do all the time. And this guy is still getting after it at 33, as I recall. This is a recent article that was up on military.com. And by the way, I want to digress just for a second,
Sure.
Tom, if I may.
Absolutely.
If you guys are in the business of anything and you have an opportunity to answer a question from a customer or potential customer, this is a great marketing tool for you to, one, take an answer that's, can be really expanded and, answer this guy's question to perfection, then do a little cut and paste, put it in a Word document, fix it up a little bit, change the tenses here and there and the first and third person issues, and then make it an article. And then you post it up on your website. That website gets put out to all the social media. That social media, can now be tagged into your store. It all links people back to your store. So this is a great method of basically using multimedia formats to get people back to your business. And then what have we done in the last year and a half? We started podcasting. So now we're turning this article, basically this email, into an article, into a video, which will now be posted on YouTube. It'll be posted on iTunes and Google Play. So this is something that I teach all the time. And Tom has been one of my business mentors for years. And it's something I teach now in the DIY Media Marketing Academy, which if you go to DIYmediamarketing.com, a partner of mine named Jim Edwards, and Tom knows him, and we all basically figure out how to leverage technology to help your business grow. And so this is one way. We've just taken old content and we're just changing it into a video format and an audio format for more consumption of potential customers. So anyway, I'm sorry I digressed there. I would take a minute just to say that, because it's something that a lot of people are not necessarily aware of the process of being able to do that. And you can do it with any business. It doesn't have to be a fitness business. It can be any business whatsoever. So the key is creating content, and that's really what we're doing here. So
and actually, and two, also, Stu, the point you just made, responding to what your consumers are wanting. And in this case, a fellow named Steve wrote you an email and said that he left active duty, just left active duty. He's 33 years old. He was med rolled due to rhabdo.
Yeah, rhabdomyolysis. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. That's
and he was in a Spec Ops pipeline. He'd like to re-enter the pipeline on the backside if he can, but he's worried that at his age, he shouldn't train, I guess is the right way to say this, the way he did when he was in his 20s, which is, again, a point you make yes. Forever. So the question he's asking is, look, if I look at my selection process at my age now, how would you, Stu, approach the training to avoid injury and maximize his progress? And he's thinking in the way that you have to think about these things: calisthenics, rucking, running, swimming, all the Spec Op proficiencies.
Yeah.
And he says he's a regular viewer of the TFR.
Yeah.
And he's followed what actually you and I have done a lot of work on, or a lot of discussion about older athletes and periodization, but he's having trouble bringing it down to exactly what he needs to do. So he's asking for additional help. And he wrote a very nice note to you. And his name is Steve. So Steve, we want to answer you.
Yes.
Or not we, because I'm not the expert here. Stu is.
Yeah.
But Stu, how would you go about now coming back to the subject? and laying it out for Steve, laying a program out for him to go back into the Spec Ops pipeline?
Well, he made some good points. And however, I think there's something bigger to worry about than how he trained in his 20s, right? I mean, yes, you probably shouldn't do that. You probably were training wrong in your 20s anyway, especially if you weren't periodizing. Because I can look back at my own journey from, a 13-year-old kid when I started training. I probably started sports at 8 years old, but really wasn't training for sports. I was just playing sports. And then started training for sports at 13. That means lifting and running and, trying to get bigger and stronger, to play football and, wrestled, and I played baseball. And so kind of bounce around through that 5-6 year window throughout high school, where that is a journey that yields some strengths. You have some weaknesses, but you also have started to accrue some injuries throughout this journey. Right. And then you go into, like for me, I went into the military and, kind of transitioned out of a football playing life and went into more of a rugby and military spec ops preparation life, which probably didn't do that right when I started my 20s, because I was just bang, 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 going hardcore year after. You could do that when you're 20, but you know what happens if you keep doing that when you're 30? You're going to fall apart like I did. So when I met Tom, I had just started creating this periodized training program. And, like I said, these are still hard workouts. I mean, I'm not saying soften up at 33 and don't do hard workouts. What you just do is you got to treat your year a little differently, as opposed to running year after year after year at 30, 40 miles a week, while you're lifting heavy weights and while you're swimming and while you're rucking and while you're doing high rep calisthenics. Those don't fit very well into a program, and at the end it's probably going to break you if you don't learn to ebb and flow throughout the year, focusing on individual elements of fitness that we can break it into. But to answer this guy's question specifically, is I would worry more about having rhabdo previously than I would be in 33. Why did you get rhabdo in the first place? And I really didn't talk about this in the article that much, but that is something that can reoccur, especially if you're a bigger guy. If you're not paying attention to your nutrition, you're not hydrated, you're losing your electrolytes.
So explain, Stu, spend a second. And for those who don't know, can you spend a second on rhabdo, what it is and how it causes it and what you do about it?
Yeah. Jeff and I went into a real big segment on this when we discussed the BORTAC group, because they have a big problem with rhabdo, because they just shoot up their intensity of their training within a week. I mean, their progression is pretty much a vertical line almost. So they get a lot of cases of rhabdomyolysis. But it's basically just the breakdown of your body's or of your muscle cells that then start getting into the bloodstream. You're going to have very high levels of proteins in your blood that can clog up your kidneys, and you can actually have kidney failure and die from this. So it happens a lot, and I guess when you'll start to see it is you'll start to see horrible muscle pain and muscle cramping. If you're peeing dark, very, very dark colors, not dark yellow, but almost brownish. Basically, it's blood in your urine.
Yep.
You don't mess around and say, I think I might have rhabdo. You go straight to the emergency room. I mean, that's how serious it is. Especially if you're putting out in these type of training programs, and anytime you go to the bathroom, you need to be checking to see that if you're, when it's white, it's right. You should be peeing clear, as much as you can. So hydration is a very big issue with it, and, if you're sweating profusely, you can't just hydrate with just regular water. You also need your electrolytes. Otherwise you're going to have, even more kidney issues that, is hyponatremia, which is basically water intoxication. You're just drowning out all your electrolytes. Proper food before, during, and after these type of trainings. You need your proteins, you need your electrolytes, you need your antioxidants, you need your fats, everything, carbohydrates. You need to be eating, have some calories in there so you don't start, breaking down other cells in your body because it's looking for something to metabolize. And then, being bigger guy with bigger muscles tends to have this, happen to them a little bit more than average. So, it kind of depends on multiple factors, but it's to be taken very seriously. So do a little research on rhabdomyolysis. And like I said, if you look back in our previous podcast, you'll see one on BORTAC, which is Border Patrol's tactical unit. You'll see us discussing that anyway. But I think the big thing for this guy is periodization and understanding the specifics of his future training. The good news is he's already been there, so he's trying to go back through the reserve route, and work on the weaknesses. Where did you start to fail? Where did you see yourself start to fail? Was it a durability issue? Was it endurance? Was it strength? Was it speed? Was it a technique issue, whether it was, rucking, swimming, or whatever? Those things, you need to get to the specifics of your training and make sure that your weaknesses are built up to a level where they are meeting the standard. So that's number one. And, that is specific to everybody. Everybody's going to be a little bit different than, like for me to just say, here, take this book and this is all you need, right? It's even, the tactical strength book, it might not be what you exactly need. And you may have to, alter it some to fit more of your weaknesses into that. So, yeah, that's where periodization comes from. That's where specificity comes from, and you have to apply it. Yeah.
So when you get into the actual thought about this, you talk about the idea of periodization, and you link it to this concept of fitness budgeting. So why don't you go back, Stu, and summarize the concept of periodization, and then we'll bring it down to, you actually give Steve a program. You say, look, here's how or not a program, but a structure of a program.
Here's how I would break it down. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I guess when you're looking at your weaknesses, you have to take a look at, you might have a strength weakness, but is strength an element of fitness that is regularly tested in your future training? If so, then yes, you're going to have to work on that thing. So your specific training program will determine your weaknesses, so to speak, right? So let's think of, like, for instance, a hell week.
Yep.
Right. The last thing you want to do is go hell week yourself, right? You're going to, you don't need to stay up for 2-3 days doing workouts. I mean, that's not what hell week preparation is for. Your strength, your durability, your endurance can all be developed to a level to where, you will still be able to endure such challenges. But, after 2 days, it becomes so mental anyway. It's you just push through everything. Right. So that's it. Don't kick yourself in the nuts if you don't have to. So let's stay away from any hell week simulation. 6 hours of log PT, for instance. I won't ever forget my first 12 hours of hell week. I did 6 hours of log PT, and then I thought we were done. And the cool thing about when you're going through, this bud selection is that, after you put the logs away, one of these times it's going to be your last time ever touching the log again. And it's usually during Hell Week. You'll never touch the logs after Hell Week. If you do, you've really screwed up. Yeah. After your class is really screwed up. And we were getting all excited, like, hey, we just did log PT for 6 hours. Man, this is awesome. And then we go eat lunch, because part of the training is just making it to the next meal. You don't even think about this is going to last for 5 days. You just say, make it to the next meal. So we go eating lunch, and we're kind of like getting a little excited. We've only been at it for like 12 hours, 6 hours. And then sure enough, right after the meal, they said, go get the logs. And then for another 6 hours, we did log PT. Now, I've never done 12 hours of log PT in my life during my preparation. So I guess what in a long way is, I'm not saying, or as I am saying, is that you don't need to practice 6 to 12 hours of log PT to prepare for 6 to 12 hours of log PT. Yeah. Right. So when I say get specific, I don't mean that specific. Right. So, but what you need to do is try to find a way to simulate some of these events that incorporate your weaknesses. So one workout, for instance, what we do, especially if you're getting involved with logs, is we do this one workout called the Sam Baby Murph, right? Which is just a 40-pound sandbag, because if you distribute 7 people under a 250-pound log, it's roughly about 40, 50 pounds each, if you do the math right. I'm probably a little bit off there. So, 40, 50-pound sandbag is a perfect way to practice, the muscle and joint stability exercises of lifting this log up. Now, is it going to be, logs are going to be a little harder. It's going to be a little more difficult. It's going to require teamwork. There's a lot more elements to it, but you can at least work your foundation to be able to handle that, to be able to endure it. Same goes for rucking. The same goes for swimming for multiple miles with a pair of fins on. You just got to get in and practice it. You don't need to swim for 6 miles like the test that is at training, but you need to, be able to swim a couple miles, maybe get up to 3. You don't have to go hardcore and, do a 6 hour swim or 6 mile swim. So anyway, so there's a lot of ways to simulate these. One of my favorite things, especially really for any Spec Ops thing, is to do what we call the Special Ops Triathlon. And this is about a 3 to 4 hour workout, depending on how you design it. And it's usually a swim with fins, it's a run, and it's a ruck. So instead of a run, swim, bike, or swim, bike, run, however they do it in triathlons, you just replace the bike with a ruck. And that's one of my favorites, and it's one of our go-tos. And you can mix in a bunch of different elements throughout the run and the ruck, to work on your grip, maybe carry some kind of weight, like a farmer walk through the whole thing, just to, simulate equipment carry, stretcher carries, those type of things that you will endure depending on what type of Spec Ops selection you are going through. So as you can see, there's a lot that's going up in the air right now. So let's organize all that a little better for people, right? So, and that's where periodization comes in. So if you think about your budget in your home or your business, at some point in your time, you can have all these bills coming at you like that. It's almost a great parallel to how fitness is, especially when you're training for selection, and you gotta work on your endurance. You have to work on your strength. You have to work on muscle stamina and mobility and flexibility and agility and speed. All of these things are kind of bouncing around, and so and trying to create a workout, that engages all of those is rather difficult, right? And you can't do it all in one day. Fitness budget is what periodization is. Same way for a home budget. It takes time to save up certain monies to pay for certain bills, right? That's just the way it works. So that's the best way for me to explain what periodization is. So, Tom, I guess we can discuss the actual
program that you,
cycle. So, set it up for me.
So you have 2 ways of thinking about this, Stu. You have one that you yourself use in periodization, where you break up the year and you then say that you're going to focus on specific things during those times so that you're not working the same things in the same way for 12 months.
Yes.
And, you know, and you, when you've set it up for your own periodization, you go so far as consider the seasons and so forth. But in the case like this, I think one of the most important aspects that was coming through to me as I was listening to what you were describing for Steve, it's that you need to think about giving yourself enough time to put in place some aspect of periodization training so that he can work on his weaknesses over time, not trying to work on all weaknesses at the same time in a concentrated way to get himself to selection.
Yes.
Right. So let's come back now and start saying, now that we've said, okay, look, you need to first of all say, I need to give myself 6, 9, 12 months of work here. And now I'm going to plan out against my weaknesses how I'm going to go attack this. When you do it for a full year, and you even consider the seasons,
Yes.
the temperatures, the conditions, the time of day the sun's going to be up, and so forth. So yours is a very interesting way to look at it. So you might want to start there. And then I know you've done some other work on periodization that shortens up the periods and so forth.
Yes. So I kind of created this around just the length of the day. So for instance, when the day is longer, my workouts tend to be longer, right? Because I'm trying to add in longer runs and longer swims and longer, high rep calisthenic workouts in the summer days, right? Those are the longer days. So I tend to focus on running endurance and muscle stamina, during those longer days of the summer. And then as the days get shorter in the fall and winter, I tend to pull back on the running mileage and pull back on the high rep calisthenics and start getting into more of a strength phase. Maybe at first start, mixing, in the spring and the fall, mixing a little bit of half and half, I call it, a little bit of calisthenics, a little bit of weights, start progressing in the running, whether it's in the spring, we're progressing up, or it's in the fall, we're progressing down, the backside of that bell curve, we're reducing our mileage over time. However, anytime that we're reducing our mileage, we're also trying to increase the speed. Mm-hmm. So, when we have low mileage running, we have fast speed going. So we're trying to work on, quick 1.5 mile times, because why? 9 times out of 10, if you're going to get to the training, you're going to have to pass this 1.5 mile run. Or a 2 mile run, depending if you're Army, or a 3 mile run if you're Marine Corps, so, the shorter distances you run, you try to make those fast. Then as you start building up into higher mileage, like in the summers, the way I have it set up, it's you're going to have it a little bit differently with a little bit slower pace, but building on more long-term stamina and endurance. So, what I have him do would break it up, and depending on his amount of time, you said it earlier, really kind of depends on the amount of time. I've done this a couple of different ways. I've had people who only have 6 months, mm-hmm. right? They've given themselves a timeline. They can't extend that timeline. They have 6 months to train. So instead of a 12 to 13 week cycle that I normally do, I turn it into a 6-week cycle.
Yep.
So that gives you a 24 week, 24, 25 week cycle of going through all 4 of the quarters, so to speak, all 4 of the seasons of how I break down all the elements of fitness into one package. So let's start off with cycle 1. Okay. So cycle 1, I tend to, focus on, muscle stamina, endurance, run, swimming, progression. We're trying to go up this bell curve. I'm not really rucking yet because I'm still kind of new to running. So, they're going to be shorter speed and agility work. We're still mixing in some weights with the calisthenics because we're not going crazy on the high repetitions yet. We're still, when we're going high high repetition, high mileage, we tend to do it with, no weight at all and more calisthenics. Right now, we're not in that zone, so we're kind of mixing in some weights. So we do that for, let's say, 6 to 12 weeks, okay, depending on your timeline. So cycle 2, we're going to take that kind of foundation that we built for that time and take it up another level. So we're going to do more rucking. We're going to add some, we're going to do more running.
Running, yeah.
Miles per week. We're going to start adding some rucking and, swimming with fins, just to kind of balance that out a little bit with some non-impact activity. But, if you're preparing for buds or some other spec ops that require swimming has to be part of the equation for sure. Now, if you're going Army SF, not so much. You can use swimming as more of an off day, non-impact activity that, is just going to help your body heal. And then we start going into the higher repetition calisthenics. And when I say higher repetition, once again, that's all relative. 100 pull-ups for somebody may not be that challenging in a workout, but 50 may be impossible for somebody. Mm-hmm. So whatever's challenging for you on those higher repetition phases, that's where you're trying to push. You're trying to get up into those higher repetition calisthenics just to work on muscle stamina, because I promise you, you will be doing a ton of push-ups. You'll be doing a lot of pull-ups. You'll be doing just a lot of work. And calisthenics is a great way to help you build, a lot, not only for your fitness tests, but it's also a great way to build some durability and muscle stamina for your future selection program. Let's see. And then cycle 3, we've kind of worked our way up to the peak after cycle 2. So now cycle 3 is going to start coming back down the backside of this bell curve on the running phase. So we're going to decrease the running. Rucking still going in there, to a degree, depending on your selection. If you're going to do a lot of rucking, then we probably keep progressing with the rucking. If you're not doing a lot of rucking and you're doing more swimming, I would increase more swimming. But like I said, once again, specifics matter. We are decreasing on this back end on cycle 3. We're decreasing the higher repetition calisthenics, and we're mixing in more speed and agility again, and mixing in some weights too. So it's still a hybrid. So it's very similar to my cycle 1. My cycle 3 it's just on the back side of that bell curve. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. And then the final one, phase 4, which if I were doing it for a 12-week cycle or a 13-week cycle, this would take me throughout the entire year, is now this is where it's my true strength and power phase. We're building some foundational preparation for heavier rucks. Like previous rucks probably were a little lighter, maybe 15, 20, 25, 30 pounds. During this phase, we're going to really start building the strength and power, so your legs and lower back and everything can start handling a little heavier rucking. We'll also pull back on the running significantly, depending on your selection process again, but add a lot more leg endurance for swimming with big fins if that is also your future. But is a great way, regardless of your selection, to just build stability in your hips and working with a big pair of scuba fins. I tell you what, my legs were probably in the best shape of my life after training for a year with, a big pair of scuba fins on. I've lifted all my life. I've, played football and rugby for a big majority of it. And I've always had big legs, but my legs were in serious shape after swimming with big fins. So it has a good transfer, even if you're not going to do a lot of swimming in your selection. It has a really good transfer to you being able to build real powerful hips and legs for, heavier load bearing exercises such as rucking or stretcher carrying and things like that. So that's kind of how I structure everything. And if you think about what I just did there, is I created a program that took anywhere between 6 and 12 months of the year. And it started out with maybe building a foundation of muscle stamina and endurance with calisthenics and a progression of running. And then mixed in some speed and agility along the way as it was progressing. We went a little higher with the endurance and focused on more running, more rucking, more swimming, higher repetitions on the muscle stamina side. And then we started decreasing a little bit, giving our joints a break. And we started rebuilding those and putting in some weights and decreasing the running, and went back to some faster runs instead of longer runs. And then the final phase, we focus on strength and power, and some of the specifics of the training, whether it's rucking or swimming with fins. Sometimes making swimming with fins part of the program just because you need a break from all the load bearing, right? So anyway, that is a way to create a fitness budget, so to speak, where, don't look at it as a workout of the day. You have to really look at it as a workout of the year to really engage yourself fully for this future challenge that you're trying to prepare for.
Yeah, I think when I listen to the way you describe this, Stu, I think it comes down to the first phase is building stamina, building endurance from wherever you are. Then you move into the second phase, which is as you're approaching the top of the hill, where things become more intense.
Well, I
But
tell you what,
staying...
and here's the problem. A lot of us hover there.
Yes.
For year after year after year. And that's the problem with our 20s is we tend to build up to this level, and then we always stay up here, 24, 25, all the way to 30. And then at 30, you wonder why, you're needing lower back surgery, or you're needing shoulder surgery, ankle surgery, or you're having this tendonitis and you're always sick. All these little things like that start adding up, and you're overtraining, quite simply.
Yeah. And then once you've reached that point, that's phase 2. Then you start down the other side where you start pulling back but adding intensity.
Yes. Yeah. So it's not easier. And I don't want people to think that just because you're not running so many miles per week that you can't make your workouts equally challenging in other areas, and especially if you're a really good runner. Now, I will say this, a couple of times with my local guys that are preparing for Spec Ops programs, I'll take a 290-pound football player who is getting ready for buds, right? And then, he obviously doesn't need that winter lift cycle.
Yeah.
That's the last thing he needs.
Yeah.
So what I will do for him is when we're in the winter lift cycle with everybody else, he and I will maybe do one set of what everybody else is doing 5 sets of, just to kind of get a foundation, get a warm up. We'll continue on with a calisthenic version of everything. Maybe not crazy repetitions, but just moving it. And then we'll just do cardio the rest of the time. And for a heavier guy, we're going to do non-impact cardio the rest of the time, just so his knees won't fall apart whenever we start ramping it up in the spring again. And then, we get him down to like 250. And then the spring we start progressing, and he gets down to 225, 210, and then he heads off to buds at 205.
That's
and
amazing.
Just an animal, right? And in the matter of a course of a year, he has gone from playing football collegiately to, getting ready for buds. That's why periodization works. And his weakness wasn't necessarily in the strength phase. And even though he lost 90 pounds, he's still strong as an ox.
Yeah.
He may not be anywhere near his 1 rep maxes that he had in college playing football, but guess what? You don't need them,
Yeah.
Before he started, he couldn't run 1.5 miles without stopping.
Yep.
So he needed to focus on his endurance. And we got those runs down to below 9 minutes, which that's a great pace. So, like I said, it all depends. If I had the same kid who came in and he was a cross country guy, right? He would definitely need that winter phase, right? But I probably would pull him back on his normal 50 to 60 miles a week of running during the running phase. Because you don't need to run that damn much, right? Pull back and let's build up that body and, build a calisthenic phase of, a base of fitness for you, so you can at least go into this weight cycle with some kind of mass, so we don't break you under the barbell or under a pull-up bar. So everybody's a little bit different, and the cool thing about periodization is it allows you to manipulate each of the phases. So depending on your weaknesses, you can either kind of pull back on some of the elements because you're great at them already, and let's focus on those weaknesses. So that's where this question is, why I really wanted to answer this question a little bit, because one, it explains it a little more thoroughly on how to do it, but then to discuss it to another level, we can explain it and break it down and make specifics for other people to understand that no program that is written in a book or you see it in a magazine, it is not specifically designed for you. You may get lucky and find one that is, but 9 times out of 10, you're going to have to adjust to figure out where your weaknesses are and push a little harder on those weaknesses, or progress and logically progress them to a level to where they're no longer weaknesses.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that you point out here, so for someone like Steve, and you know a little bit more about Steve than I do, but if you were going to then say, look, this is someone who's in their early to mid 30s, they had problems before, they're now headed into this. For Steve, you'd cycle one, and let's assume he's only got 6 months. He'll spend 6 weeks on each cycle.
Yeah.
And he'll start with, and I'll let you describe it, but he'd go with muscle stamina endurance first and build up.
Like I said, he didn't really enter his PST scores.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't enter where he failed, previously. Sounds like, he failed because he got rhabdo.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
That tells me that, compared to the selection program, he was not as prepared as he could have been. Or it was just a bad day and he was super dehydrated, didn't eat, and he's a big guy and got rhabdo by, I don't want to say no fault of his own, but things like that can happen regardless of your preparation. So you have to really pay attention to, all the elements of nutrition, dehydration, electrolytes, recovery. At the end of the day, what are you doing at the end of the day of a selection? You being able to stretch and foam roll and loosen up and break up some of that lactate that's stuck in those muscles, so you're not as sore the next day, is really a big part of your success getting to and through, training programs.
And I will tell you that a couple of concepts here that I just know that the way you think, that he likely had issues that if you do cycle one well, you'll create a good foundation to avoid, right? It's building up the stamina, building up, meaning the endurance and the quantity of exercises, but doing it in a smart way and not going too far with some of the more intense things. Yeah. But cycle one is building that foundation of stamina and endurance. Yeah. Among the different things that he needs to do, running, swimming, whatever it is that he is going to be part of his selection process. And that's the other point you make, is that, look, this has to first start that you pass through selection, because if you don't pass through selection, the rest of it doesn't matter. So let's get you ready for selection.
Yeah.
And so you start by saying that, and that's your point about, don't worry about that 12 hours of log PT. Worry about getting that foundation built first in cycle one.
Yes. Then
you move up towards the peak with cycle two, where you're starting to now add more time, more running distance,
more volume.
More volume. And that's where you say, be careful that you don't allow yourself to now be happy that you've achieved the goal, right? Because
Right,
now you
right.
can
I
do
mean,
your 20
there's
pull-ups.
still other things to
Right.
do because, you know, we need to add a strength foundation to that as well. And it kind of depends on your weaknesses, to be honest. Your cycle one may be the strength cycle.
Yeah.
You may need to build a foundation of strength because from what I've seen throughout the tactical fitness world is there's a couple of different philosophies. I personally like to build a foundation of calisthenics and running progression first. So if I was going to take a teenager,
Yeah.
I would say, let's start off with calisthenics and running and whatever, you swim, bike, some
Yeah.
other additional form of cardio too. Let's build a foundation of fitness with calisthenics. Then we've built that for several months. Let's start adding weights, right? And making it those calisthenics a little harder, maybe with a weight vest, maybe with dumbbells, right? Now let's start adding more of the power lifts. Let's get into bench press and squats and deadlifts and learn how to do that. So there is a progression for building strength as well. Now, if you come from a strength background, I would probably start you on the calisthenics. If you come from an endurance background, I would probably start you off on the probably a little bit of both, be honest
Yeah.
with you. I would probably mix a little bit in there because, it doesn't take long for a very light endurance guy, say a cross country guy, to be crushed under a pull-up bar and push-ups. But their transition from running, being an endurance guy, to being a high rep calisthenics guy is phenomenal.
Mhm.
Typically, if we see a guy on day one doing, be a cross country, he's kicking our ass and running, right? But we put him on the pull up bar and we kick his, right? But in about 6 weeks, he's about even with all of us now. He is able to maintain because he's such a light body weight. Progressing in pull ups is not that hard. Progressing push ups is not that hard. And then the wonderful thing about it, he's still fast.
Yeah. He's
He
still
didn't he
fast,
didn't
right?
he didn't lose anything. I mean, a 6-minute mile for a cross country guy is a jog, whereas everybody else is trying to, run as fast as they can to get a 6-minute mile and hit all these things. So, like I said, it really all depends on what you're bringing to the table, what's your athletic history like, what's your history of injuries and ailments that really kind of, and what your future goals are, all determine your journey of
Yeah.
how you're going to get there. And this was a great question, for instance, that I thought deserved a bigger answer in a big article, but then round two in a podcast, not to try to confuse it anymore, because I know I didn't come out with, a straight specific plan for this guy, but you see the thought process that is required to creating programs. If you're creating programs for yourself, think a little harder.
Yeah.
It's not just going and doing, some pyramid workout and then, a 5-mile run afterwards. It sometimes you have to progress to that level. Right. So anyway.
Yeah. And I want to carry on. So we've gotten Steve up here.
Yes.
He's now
Sorry.
got the volume. And we're then coming down the backside of the curve where you start decreasing the quantity, but increasing the intensity.
Yes.
And also you're adding in here speed, agility, all these secondary characteristics that you can't really pull off until you create that foundation.
True.
And now you're coming down to this final cycle where you are now adding even more strength, but again, pulling back on the volume, but adding more and more strength. And then if you were to continue the cycle, then you go back up to the,
Yep.
right. And that's what you do. You just lengthen
Absolutely.
it out in the year and then
Yeah.
make it fit the cycles. And the other thing to think about here, in my line of work at the time, the most important thing for me was to be able to deal with weapons, right? Ballistic and non-ballistic. So in all my workouts, I swim and shoot. I mean, I fight and shoot.
Yeah.
Right? And so you have to be specific about what else do you need, right? For whatever you're preparing
Yeah.
for. If you're a first responder and you have to jump off trucks, you got to think about how do you deal with all these things that fit? But the other thing that I would say, Stu, that I think is really important, if you can figure out, a couple of thoughts about this. One thing that you did for me while I was going through cancer treatments is you were always responding to whatever my trouble was. And you remember this time last year, man, I was cramping up. I couldn't walk 100 yards without my whole body cramping.
Yeah.
And you were helping me figure out, okay, how do I deal with that? Because my system just wasn't working right. And it was chicken noodle soup that did it for me. But, who knows?
I tell people all the time, man.
I know.
I know it sounds funny, and I don't like eating a lot of foods out of cans. Yeah, I typically don't like eating a lot of foods out of cans, but I will eat a can of chicken noodle soup.
Man, that stuff works. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
But the other thing that you really did that has helped me a lot as those of us that are not in our 20s is that mobility day.
Yeah.
Take that day where you are focusing on purely mobility, nothing else. And that really does save you. And then the other thing is, if you can figure out in all this, if you can learn from your own body, what is it going to take so you can do what you need to do? So, for me, I have a certain set of things I like to know I can do.
Yeah.
And physically, I know I can do. And making sure that however you're training, it supports that. And that's your point here. In this specific case, it's, look, the most important thing for Steve to do is to pass the selection.
Yeah.
So his training at first, these sets of 4 cycles need to support his getting to,
yes.
Right? Your concept of getting to. Getting through is another one. And
Sure,
you can deal with that separately.
Phase 2 of tactical fitness. Yeah, definitely.
You got it. You got it.
We discussed that in future or previous podcasts.
Absolutely. So anyway, I hope that we've gone deeply enough here that Steve and people like Steve have a real serious understanding now of the concept of periodization and how it applies to the more mature athlete.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. And you know what? I wish I was 33. So I mean, 33 is not old. That's the first thing he's got to understand. 33 is not old. I was probably in the best shape of my life when I was 33. After rebuilding myself from falling apart because I fell apart by like 29, 30. But it took me a couple of years of this cycle to help me rebuild myself to a point where I was comfortable, pushing the limits again. So
Stu, as always, bud, Sunday morning. Fortunately, it's not dark 30 here because we both were a little bit groggy.
Yes.
But Tactical Fitness Report with Stu Smith, number 126.
Yes. Thank you, sir. I appreciate you driving me through this one.
No problem, pal. Later.
All right. We'll see you.